So today we're gonna do something a little bit different. We're just gonna talk. You know, it's a nice day outside. I'm walking my dog. Just want to talk a little bit. So it actually took me a long time before I realized what I wanted to do in music. There were days where I thought I wanted to be a film composer. There were days I wanted to be a producer. Days I wanted to be an engineer. And so that's probably why my life's all over the place right now. That's probably why I'm producing music, teaching, and performing live. But one thing I realized is that while I was doing all of that in the background, I was learning what would eventually be my path, which is the musician's ear. And so basically, what I wanted to do today is I wanted to walk you through the phases of my journey. So that way, maybe if you feel lost in your journey, maybe you can learn something from mine. It took me a long time, but I realized I wasn't actually lost. It's just I was learning. It's kind of like how Myron Golden says that it's either working for you or it's working on you. And there were definitely some times where I was being worked on. So, yeah, hopefully you enjoy and hopefully you learn something. So, this first phase is all about growing. No strategies, no master plans, just experimenting. So, it was a Saturday morning and I had to go to Sam's with my parents and I didn't want to go. They had the free samples, which was cool and all, but it's Saturday. I wanted to stay home, but we had to go. So I ended up getting there, and as we get there, I go straight to the electronics section. I want to see what games they got. And as soon as I get there, that's when I see it. It's like the clouds separated and the light shone right there. It was just this little Casio keyboard with headphones, and I realized I could just walk up to it and play it. Now, for me, this was a big deal because the only other time I would have had to play it would have been at church with the church musicians, and they weren't about to just let some random kid come up and play their stuff. So I really hadn't had a chance before this. So I just remember sitting down to play, and then the next thing I know it's time to go. And for the first time, I didn't actually want to leave Sam's Club on a Saturday as a little kid. So that was when I realized, like, okay, I got to do something in music, and that was when my parents realized it too, because that Christmas they bought me that keyboard. So to me, it was just like this cool toy, Like I said, no master plans yet. Um, but that same school year, the intermediate school band came in and they played for us. So I was in elementary school at the time. So, and for some reason, I realized when I say intermediate school, a lot of people are like, "What?" Because so we had elementary school, then intermediate school, which was 5th and 6th grade, and then we had uh, middle school, which was 7th and 8th grade. I don't know why we did it like that, but that was just why we did it. And so, they were playing and they were dancing and stuff, and my dad was already playing Parliament for me, so to see them just have so much fun with music, it was a no-brainer. I had to join band. And so during this time is really when I started to train my ear. See, I wanted to play just like the guys at church, and so I would come home and just try to imitate what I heard, or the best of what I could remember. And so I didn't think I was a keyboard player. The guy at church playing, he was a keyboard player, but me, I was just experimenting. And so the but what I did have was I had this area where I could just play and there were no expectations of me. I could just play what I thought sounded cool. And I think this is really important because a lot of the times, when I start new students especially, they don't have this time that they just spend with the instrument. So telling them that they have to do something else now kind of feels like a chore. So I always say, like, try to find something that you like, whether it's just like, you know, you found this like funky chord that, sounds kind of cool, or, you figured out how to play this song that you like. Um, it's definitely important to find your own your own thing that you like about it and um, pursue that. And so that's what this period was about for me. And yeah, and like I said, I started to train my ears, and that was when I started to you know to realize I can figure it out, like what I'm actually hearing in my head. So probably right around the end of high school. So probably I was probably say I was a junior in high school. I started to learn jazz, and at this point, trumpet is the main focus. Piano is still something I do kind of as a hobby, but it's still nothing serious. I still don't see myself as a keyboard player. Um, but at this point, I've done several jazz camps. And one thing that jazz taught me is it taught me how the chords work. And once I started to see like that, I started to relate to that to the stuff that I was learning by ear, and I started to realize like, oh, okay, I see how this makes sense. And so I think this phase is also important. But if I was just playing by ear, that would be just like learning phrases, right? I'm not learning the system of music, and so by actually going to these jazz camps and learning the system of just how music works, I was able to, you know, become more of a writer, and I realized that's what I wanted to do. There's also this moment with my wife that I'll never forget. Right, so we went to high school together, and she took piano lessons, and so they had this piano just in the band hall in high school. And so one day, I'm just playing it, and she comes up and she asks me like, "Oh, how long have you been taking lessons?" And I had to tell her like, I don't actually take lessons. And I just remember the look on her face. She just got so jealous because she had been taking lessons for years at that point, and she was just like, "So how are you playing like that? You haven't taken lessons?" I don't know. It's just hilarious to me whenever I think about that. So by the time I started college, I was definitely very interested in writing music. I was a composition major, but mentally, I still saw myself as like just a writer. I was not a piano player in my mind by any means. Um, that is until I started my band. Um, so I had some piano skills at this point. I've been playing for a while, so I basically just wanted to use what I was writing the music on in the context of the band and play my trumpet at the same time. So I had both my keyboard, my little Casio keyboard on the stage, and my trumpet at the same time. And so college had these piano proficiency classes. And so while up to this point, I had just been playing kind of for fun, um, with the college proficiency classes, I ended up really like developing my skill and like learning how to play scales and learning the fingerings and all of that. And so by that point, I've started to feel more comfortable with calling myself a piano player. And so because I was writing for my band, I needed a way to get them the songs. And I may have used sheet music a little bit, but I didn't really just want to use sheet music, because the band was supposed to be an area where we can not be academic for once. We could just let our hair down, so to say. So I needed a way to get them the ideas. So that was kind of how I started my way into beat making. I had made maybe a couple of tracks for fun before that, but that was really how I got started into using DAWs and stuff like that. So after college, I ended up working a couple of odd jobs, working at Taco Bell until 4 in the morning, just typical after college jobs. I got married. My band ended up splitting up, uh, and I started teaching piano. At first, I was teaching for another company, and then I started teaching for myself. And quietly in the background, I started producing for myself a bit more seriously. And so what I realized was teaching sort of changed everything. because when you teach, you start seeing like why people struggle, and you start to see what actually matters and what shortcuts don't work and actually end up becoming the long route. And so that's when I realized like the stuff that I learned in my early days is the stuff that sort of became like my superpower when I, especially at this point because I started producing professionally. So as I'm producing, I'm realizing that all this stuff I've learned, having that period of, not having to rush to become better and just focus on training my ears, having that period of learning music theory, because that's what ended up becoming necessary for me to write my own music. And, having that period of learning the technical skills, uh, that's what made me actually feel like a pianist. So by having all of that, that is what I realized that beat makers need, because a lot of the times, you'll see beat makers and all they know how to do is click in little notes on the piano roll, which is cool, but you know, if so to say, like if you can actually play keys, then you know that it's a whole superpower on its own. So yeah, that's how I got the idea to start teaching producers, and the rest is history. And so yeah, so my path, the musician's ear, it's been something that's been a tool not just for myself but for others now. So yeah, if you feel like you're behind, don't. You're probably just learning something that's going to be of use to you in the future. So again, try not to worry if you are worried, and if you aren't worried, don't start. Okay? So learn what you need to in this phase and continue to grow. You're not late, you're just listening. And so if you want to develop the musician's ear yourself, especially on piano, I talk about this stuff all the time here. Subscribe or drop a comment and tell me what phase you think that you're in.